First thing that we need to do is set up our base class. So again, this is going to be the base path, which is going to be our graphics folder. Just like we did in the previous tutorial, this should be nothing new. I've created our texture atlas as splash texture atlas and our texture region as splash texture region. Again, same concepts that we went through in the last tutorial. But as for the texture atlas, we're going to set this equal to a new bitmap texture atlas, and we have to get the texture manager. And previously we just went get texture manager because we are in the base game activity back here, so we could do that because it would be referring to that activity, and we could just say this dot get texture manager, but we can't do that because we have to relate to an activity that extends the base game activity, which is what we set up in the constructor. So what we're going to do to get the texture manager is relate to this dot activity dot get texture manager here instead of just get texture manager, because we want to make sure it's coming from the right place. Next, we have to define our atlas size. Again, this has to be the power of 2, and 256 is 2 to the power of 8, so that'll work, and it's the same size as our image, so we'll only have one image on our texture atlas. Next thing that we have to do is define our texture region. Again, this is where we're placing our image on the atlas. So we're going to relate to the bitmap texture atlas texture region factory. Man, that's fun to say. And we're going to say create from assets. And first we're going to relate to our atlas. So we're going to say splash.textureAtlas or TA. And then we're going to relate to our activity. In the previous tutorial we said this. Again, for the same reasons we couldn't type just get texture manager up here, we need to relate to the activity that's being passed in instead. So again, we can say this dot activity, which is our class variable. Then we need to set up what image we want. So we're going to say splash.ping because that's the image I added, and maybe the position, which will be 0, 0. We don't really need to put that, but again, it's good practice to get into. I'm going to hit Control Shift F. Yes, I said shift with an F in it. So go ahead and hit Control Shift F and it'll format everything for texture region. The last thing that we have to do to load our resources is actually load them. So we're going to relate to our texture atlas and just hit dot load, and we'll load up all of our resources that we need just for our splash scene. Now that we have defined our method to load the splash resources, we also want to be able to load or create our splash scene. So within here we're going to relate to our scene called splash scene that again we set up within our scenes here. Again, we could separate this out into different classes that extend scene and work with it that way, but again, just as for example's sake, we're going to do it here for now. So let's just hit new scene, create a new scene, and then we're going to relate to that and maybe change the background. So set background, new background, and then we're just going to say 1, 1, 1, which will make it black. Next thing that we want is a sprite. Again, this should be kind of familiar, which will be our icon. We're going to just set this equal to be a new sprite as well. And we could set this in the center of the game by referring to the camera like we did with Fred, our character, but I'll show you a different way as well. So you can just hit 0, 0. Again, I'm kind of following along with Stuart's example, so I kind of want to go over that, make sure no one's confused with what he's doing. And then we need to relate to our texture region, which is our splash texture region, and lastly our vertex buffer. Again, I'm just going to relate to the engine.getVertexBuffer manager or object manager for that, and we've set up our sprite icon. Now, like I said, the other way to position our sprite, we can just say set position, and we can relate to the X and Y values here. I'm going to relate to our camera that gets passed into this class dot get width minus the icon size. So we're going to say dot get width, and that's going to be within parentheses there, and we're going to divide that by 2, which will be the X position of our icon. So that's a nice way to be able to center things if you don't know your exact image size or icon size. You can just use these get width and divide everything by 2 to center it. Now for the height, we're going to do kind of the same thing. Get height here minus icon.getHeight, and then outside the parentheses we're going to divide everything by 2, and that should center our icon. And that looks pretty good for our splash scene. So the only other thing that we need to do is relate to our splash scene and attach the child or the entity, which is our sprite icon. So we're just going to add that there. And then again, we need to return our splash scene because this method is looking for a scene. We don't want to return null like we set up previously. So we're just going to paste splash scene there. So I'm also going to copy this method here just to not cause confusion. We can also load menu resources. I'm going to copy this method down here to create our menu screen. And maybe for now we'll just copy all this and paste it within our create menu scene. Change these values just to be 0, 0, 0, which will be a white background, and that way we'll know we're transferring between scenes. The other thing that we want to do is highlight just the selected area and hit Control F, and this will bring up a find and replace. And what we're going to replace is splash scene with menu scene. And make sure the scope is only the selected lines that you have highlighted, otherwise it's going to make the replacements for everything within your class. Go ahead and hit replace all, and as you can see now it changed everything to menu scene, so that looks good. We probably don't want to display our splash icon within our menu scene, but again we're just getting something set up to work with. And that's probably long enough for this tutorial. Again, we just created a scene manager and set up some variables that we'll relate to. We might want to change everything to be private just for good practice. But this will load up our scene or splash scene with its resources first, and then it will transfer between different scenes as needed. So it's a pretty awesome class, and in the next tutorial I'll show you guys how to actually use it within our game activity class, and I'll probably go over everything again just so you guys have a better understanding of what we're doing before we get too comprehensive and you're just like, what is going on? I don't understand anything. So hopefully you guys are following along. Hopefully everything's making sense. Again, check out mybringback.com because we'll have additional information. As people ask me more questions, as people are confused with tutorials, I'll be able to attach information to the tutorial post so you can kind of read through and hopefully get additional input that way. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Hope you're having a fantastic day, and we'll see you later.